I had the honor of being interviewed by Dr. Ankita Jain. She is one of the founding members of Your Dental Tutor, and please check out her website at the end of this video and also linked down in the description. Ankita is one of the founding members of Your Dental Tutor. Ankita and her team at Your Dental Tutor assist foreign qualified dentists registering in the United Kingdom, going through the language requirements, IELTS, the ORE and the LDS examinations in order to register as a dentist and practice in the United Kingdom. She is very familiar with immigration as a foreigner herself and also her clients. In this interview, we cover in brief why I immigrated the first time to the Netherlands from South Africa in 2004. We discuss the opportunities for foreign qualified dentists in the Netherlands and also very briefly touch on the registration process, the paperwork, the application, and the costs and the timeline involved when immigrating to the Netherlands.
Hello everyone. I welcome you on my channel Your Dental Tutor, where we talk and discuss about various dental topics and the opportunity for the overseas dentist across the globe. In the series of worldwide scope about dentistry, we have some special guest on our channel today who is very kind to accept our invitation on such a short notice for sharing his journey of migrating from South Africa to Europe and guiding us through his immense knowledge about the same. He is none other than Dr. Reinhard van Eden. He's a South African-born dentist, currently registered in 6 countries with 2 more international registrations pending. Doctor, we welcome you on our channel. I would really want to give a brief introduction about him, which is very less, and I have got this information by stalking on his various websites and the YouTube channel and Instagram channels. Dr. Van Eden moved to the Netherlands after his undergraduate dental studies. After 2 years in Europe, he returned and continued postgraduate studies in surgery. In South Africa, he was one of handful of biological metal-free dentists and an assistant maxillofacial and oral surgeon. He immigrated a second time to the Netherlands during lockdown and has been living in Europe now for 3 years. Apart from assisting medical, dental, and other healthcare professional colleagues with registration in the Netherlands, Reinhard also does immigrational coaching and consulting sessions regarding physical and emotional immigration in general. In his free time, he travels extensively through Europe. He is also a qualified advanced scuba diver and a qualified free diver. Recently, he has taken up sailing and dreams of solo crossing of the Great Blue Yonder during a future dated sabbatical. So, Dr. Van, it's an immense pleasure to have you on the channel. I would like to ask you, and of course, my viewers also want to know that what tempted you to move from South Africa after dental qualification to Europe, and how was this journey all about?
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my knowledge with you and your viewers. When I qualified in 2002, I was living in South Africa and everything was very good and well and peaceful in South Africa. I was young and didn't think about the future too much. We had an opportunity up until that time. The tradition in South Africa was that dentists would immigrate to, or at least work for some time in the UK after finishing their studies. But just a year prior, before I finished, the UK brought in examinations for South Africa. I had a friend and a colleague in the class with me, and his father was a dentist, a South African dentist in the UK that retired, and they were keeping an eye on Europe and tabs on the Netherlands specifically. And at that stage, the Netherlands was still recognizing the South African dental qualification on a one-to-one basis. So right after I qualified, we were a few friends that went over to the Netherlands, and we had 3 practices amongst the 5 or 6 of us, and I could just basically start working in the Netherlands. I never planned at that stage, as I mentioned, I was very young and I didn't think about the whole concept of emigrating and leaving my country for good. So it was more of a first-time experience traveling and seeing the world. That's why I also then at that point didn't really commit to the whole experience long-term. And I didn't really love dentistry too much at that stage. And I was trying to get out of dentistry. And that's why I went back to study surgery, to see if that would be a way out of dentistry. And here I am 20 years later, back in Europe and sharing my experience all over again.
That sounds really awesome. And that's quite an inspiring journey from not being in dentistry to being such a successful dentist in Europe from a third world country. So definitely we would like to know from you that how a dentist from third world countries can move to Netherlands. What's the scope there, and how a dentist can actually attempt to go there?
Yes. With my experience of immigrating twice to Europe now, and also, as you mentioned, I have 6 registrations, 2 more pending. It's become kind of a hobby for me to see where and how I can get registered. And what I've discovered is your question is very well articulated in the sense of migration is mostly from third world countries to first world countries. One can totally list all the reasons why, economy, political reasons, security, future, whatever you have on that list would basically be generic. And what I've discovered with all these countries, irrespective of where you want to immigrate to, is the list of documents that you need is basically give or take the same in all the countries. So there's a procedure of the list that you need to get together, and then you can basically immigrate anywhere in the world. So that being said, as a generic statement, it is very possible for any dentist anywhere in the world to immigrate to any other country. And then specifically, we will be focusing on dentists from third world countries migrating to the third world country, dentists from third world countries migrating to first world countries. And then specifically, we will touch on the requirements in the Netherlands and a little bit more generically in the European context. The possibility is vast. The need is great in Europe, and especially in the Netherlands. The amount of foreign dentists currently working in the Netherlands is 25% of the BIG registered dentists. The BIG is the registration body that governs healthcare professionals, BIG or BIG, and 25 to 30% of dentists in the Netherlands are already foreign qualified. So the possibilities really is there. There is a shortage of amount of posts that are being advertised at this moment on some of the council's website is 400 to 500 dental posts that are open that hasn't been filled for 3 or 4 years already. So the scope is immense. The need is very great.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know that. And I would like to know that what are the primary requirements to practice in Netherlands, and how much time does it take for an applicant to get the final registration?
Yes, I think one thing that should be mentioned is your audience is probably English speaking or has English as a first or at least a second language. The one thing that one takes for granted is when you speak to people that are immigrating, we always have to do an English examination somewhere in the world as if it's a normal, natural thing. But we never stop and realize that the reason why we take English as an exam before you register in a foreign country is because that is the native language of the country where you're immigrating to, be it Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or the UK then. So the same would apply if you want to immigrate and work in Europe. The examination that you will be doing then would be then in their native language, be it German or Spanish, or then in the Netherlands it would be Dutch. So one of the requirements before you start, I'll get back to the point on the language then. The requirements, as I mentioned, is basically the same most parts of the world. It usually starts with an application process, and in the application document there will be a list of documents that you will need to give and hand in supporting your application. And one of the main things they will be looking at is, are you a qualified dentist legally in the country where you qualified and studied. They will check the documentation, and then the next step would be then the language examination to see that whatever country you are applying to, the Netherlands in this case, that you are competent in the language. And then there will be a theoretical and or a practical component just to make sure that your standard of dentistry is up to the standard that they expect. And that is basically the same trajectory that you will follow if you register in the Netherlands then.
Okay. So in Netherlands, do we have to appear any kind of examination for getting the registrations done?
Yes, absolutely. The first part is the application process with the supporting documents. So just coming back to the question you asked earlier as well in terms of the time frame, compiling that list of documents where you submit that to the council here would take anything from 3 to 6 or 12 months, depending on what country you immigrate from. Some of these third world countries have very seriously failed state departments or universities, and it takes a long time for you to accumulate all the official documentation that you require. So that is the first part that takes some time. Of course, you can do that long distance, and a lot of those documents can be submitted digitally. If the process requires, they might ask for the original documents at a later stage. Then you will get the green light to do the language examination if they accept all your documentation. That part, of course, I always suggest for people to start with the language studies before you and as you are busy submitting your documents, because it takes time to learn a new skill and especially a new language. So once you've completed that 3 or 6 or 12 months process of your documentation, at least you will be on a very good level of language to go and sit the examination in the language which they invite you for. I remember 20 years ago when the UK introduced the examinations also to the South African dentists, we had to fly there for the language examination. It's only later that it has become so popular that they've rolled it out internationally that you can do it in almost any country. Dutch is a very small country with 17 million people, 17 million people, so the language is not that international. So unfortunately for the language component, you will have to fly in and do it with the relevant organization in the Netherlands. All 4 parts of the language examination can be done within 2 days if you plan it as such and if you are prepared to such a level. But I also know of some people that fly in and do only 2 parts and then come back again. So it depends on yourself and your ability. Once you have completed the language component, then the theoretical and the practical examination will take place. And with most countries, again, that will have to be in person at whatever organization, the university or the council. So yes, that is again kind of generic everywhere in the world in terms of the whole process. Yes.
True. Yes, we have to give exams everywhere actually to get registered. So I believe that there is no escape from the examination. Is there any way where we don't have to appear for examination and we can register? Or even if we cannot register, can we work in Netherlands without the registration or without giving the examinations? Is there any way?
Yes, there is on the application form on the BIG, there is a category that you can apply for a temporary registration. It's not really a route that I would recommend or that most people would qualify for, but there is something else that offers a back door, and that is what is called if you work under supervision. The laws of the country currently provide for a dentist to take somebody in and have them legally brought into the country working under the auspices of a registered dentist with the BIG. Of course, you will still at least have to prove to yourself and your sponsor that you are busy with the process. You have been accepted in terms of your paperwork. It also will be advantageous and almost a requirement that you would have the language up to a certain level of understanding and comprehension. But there is this possibility that if you can find somebody that is familiar with you, familiar with your country, familiar with your quality of education, that you could get such a type of professional sponsorship without having had completed the examinations yet. But the idea would still be that you continue with the process. At least you would have access into the country quicker, if I can put it like that.
Yeah, that sounds little bit hopeful thing.
Yes.
That we can actually hope if we can convince someone in the country about our qualification, and if we are able to pass that language test before that. Yeah,
yes, it helps for yourself to pass the language test, and also it just makes sense that you don't want to come to a country where nobody understands you. You can't, in dentistry, it's about consent and communication and trust, and
True.
Of course the language is the first stepping stone.
Yeah. So, doctor, could you just tell us that how much expenditure one can expect in this whole process of registration?
Yes. I have a small analogy that I always say. I say, how do you eat an elephant? And you eat an elephant one bite at a time, unless you're a vegan or a vegetarian. The whole process of immigration, be it the paperwork administratively, the examinations, or the cost now that you are asking about, is one must always bear in mind that even if it is a 2-year process, you start at the beginning. And the same goes when you ask the question about the cost-wise. It's an expensive process, as is relocation and immigration to any country, I guess. But one must remember that irrespective of the amount of money, it'll always be broken down into small, edible chunks. First things first. So broadly speaking, I also have this information on a document that I've compiled explaining this whole process with costs laid out. The language part is probably where you will spend the most biggest chunk of your money, because you will have to take language lessons with a tutor or online, or purchase a course. So I've calculated that if you start with a non-Dutch person with no background in Dutch or German or any of the other Germanic languages, it'll take you about I can't recall the amount of hours now, but that would calculate about 3,500 to 4,000 euros for that process. And bear in mind, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, if you start that process when you start your accumulation of your official documentation, it'll take you about 6 to 12 months to learn any new foreign language, even if it's Spanish or German or whatever, and then Dutch in this case. So if you were to say that over a course of 12 months, 18 months, maybe, depending on how quick you can learn a language, that 4,000 euros would be spent over that amount of time. Monthly, weekly, hourly, depending on how quick you have a tutor and how quickly you can absorb the language. Once you have spent that amount of money, your paperwork has been accepted, there is an examination fee that you have to pay for access to the language, and that's about 600 euros. And after that, there is an administration fee that you pay for the examination, the theoretical and the practical examination, and that's about 1,500 euros, 1,500 euros. If you calculate that, that's about 6,000 euros over this, let's call it 1 to 2 years of time. So again, it's a lot of money, but if you see it as little bits and chunks of pieces, it becomes quite edible. Of course, the other factors that you will have to reason into this cost estimation would then be your flight tickets as well, if you have to fly in to come and do the language examination, and at a later stage fly in to come and do the theoretical and the practical examination, with the accommodation costs and some spending money for beer and cheese. We have very good quality beer and cheese in the country.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, thank you for enlightening us with this expenditure thing, especially, which is the major consideration if any applicant actually think of moving overseas. So, yeah. So I would also like to add on this, or I would like to ask you rather, that if someone gets registration in the Netherlands, somehow, if anyone gets the registration finally from the Netherlands body, then is he or she allowed to practice in the other European nations?
In theory, yes, because the European has guidelines that all European qualifications are on the same standard. And you also get migration within Europe between European countries and European dentists. For example, if you say that a European dentist from Spain would be a good example, we have some Spanish dentists in the country. If they want to migrate, they are still subjected to the language requirements, because remember, we're not doing an IELTS, we're doing a native or a country-specific language examination. So even other European nationals still have to pass the same language examination that any third world country resident would have to pass, but they would have the advantage that their qualification would already be on the same standard as the Netherlands, and that would immediately be recognized without examination. The same applied to the UK. Whilst you were still part of the European Union. You also, the UK dentists also had free access into Europe up until, I think, January of this year, maybe 2024, I think.
Yeah.
So the same would apply. So in theory, you have access. There are some rules and guidelines encompassing that. But in theory, yes, you would have freedom of movement.
Okay, thank you. What are the challenges basically you think that someone actually faces while practicing or migrating to a non-English country?
Yes, again, coming back, I think the biggest hurdle or stumbling block emotionally and psychologically would be the language. I don't know how many languages you are able to speak, read, or write, and how good you are with languages. But the languages that I've tried to learn in my life, it's difficult if you're not a language-orientated person. So definitely, the language would be the biggest barrier in any country if it's not going to be English.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Apart from that, I suppose would then also be the psychological wall of the costs. But again, if you just break it down psychologically, that is spread over a period of time, one can manage your own thought processes about the expensiveness thereof. But the language, I think, is definitely the first hurdle and time-consuming part that would make it difficult for you.
Yeah, I totally agree on that part. And what do you think? I'm just curious to know that are the foreign dentists accepted by the local people in Netherlands?
Very much so. The Dutch, as a nation, is very international. They are very open-minded. They are very liberal. And the Dutch, as a population, really trust the systems and the structures in place in this country. So if you are called a dentist, which it's a title, they don't use the title doctor unless you have a doctorate degree. The title dentist is your title. So if you introduce yourself and somebody knows that you're a dentist, they have very great respect for that, because the title is managed by the BIG register of council that manages healthcare workers. And just the fact that you have gone through the process and you can call yourself a dentist, they absolutely have trust in you to perform the dental duties that you are entrusted to. And also with all the people visiting this country in and out, I mean, if I visit Amsterdam on a weekend, there's just, you hear of all the languages you don't hear Dutch almost. It's just foreign languages. So the Dutch have become accustomed to foreigners traveling to this country and definitely migrating and fulfilling a lot of other duties, amongst others, healthcare workers. So yes, the trust is immense for foreigners with open arms in this country.
Okay, thank you so much, and that's quite generous about the people over there.
Absolutely.
I would also like to know that if someone approaches you for complete guidance, then are you available to guide them personally on this process?
Yes, absolutely. What I always recommend, if somebody contacts me via email or reach out, I always tell them to just go and look at 2 or 3 specific YouTube videos that I've made on the topic, because what sometimes happens is, I suppose the same goes for you. You can talk for hours and hours about this topic, and it helps if somebody has just done some preparatory work in terms of the process. Otherwise, one ends up answering so many questions. What about this? What about this? What about that? So on my channel, I've got different types of videos, but there's about 2 or 3 specifically about the registration process, just to get an idea of the picture. And there is also a video about the language component, how to think about that. And then I've made a video about the immigrational process and how to think about that in generic terms. And once somebody has then watched those videos, spend maybe 50 or 60 minutes on those 2 or 3 videos, I also recommend downloading the document on my website that also in a written format explains the whole process for the individual to at least have an idea. Then I recommend a consultation with me to answer specifics, because only after gathering the knowledge then for yourself, you will be in another space in your mind to ask more relevant specific questions and make it more productive and structured. And then only, I almost want to say, then only am I willing to help somebody, because then it will be structured. Yes, but I am consulting a lot of international dentists. 60% of my dentists are from South Africa at the moment, but there's 40% of the dentists that I help and assist is from the weirdest and strangest parts in the world. So yes, definitely I will be able to assist.
That's awesome. That's awesome, actually. And I'm happy to tell my viewers and followers that you can contact Dr. Van Eden on his website or through email ID or on various social platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. He's available everywhere, and you can contact him personally after watching his videos. Make sure you have little bit knowledge by watching his videos, and the links of all these platforms will be given in the description box. You can check them out there. So it was very enlightening to talk you, Dr. Eden, and we got to know about how the registration can be done in the non-English speaking countries of Europe. So it was very, very enlightening for all of us. And I'm sure me and my viewers have got a lot of knowledge about the same. So thank you so much. We are grateful to you for your time and kindness. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope to hear soon about some of your viewers that might be interested, and as we continue this process of helping our colleagues from other third world countries immigrating to greener pastures. Thank you very much for having me.
Definitely. So I would also like to add after this that we also help you and support you in the guidance of ORE and LDS examinations of UK, and we provide the courses and we help you with the registration process also. So if you want to contact us, the Your Dental Tutor team, then you can visit the website www.yourdentaltutor.co.uk, as well as we are available with the same name, Your Dental Tutor, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube channel. And if any questions are there related to the content of this video, you can comment in the comment section and we will be back to you with the answers of your queries. Till then, take care, bye-bye, and have a nice time. Thank you.
Thank you.